we are honored to be here this afternoon in recognition of a very important issue in our lives, which has been coming our way for the longest time. And I'm glad that today we sit here in these venues and we have a conversation from all aspects, from all angles, from government, from business, from the waste speakers themselves, and all other representatives of any organizations that I might have left out. I just would like to welcome you all. My name is Tshilidzi Ligaraba. I work for the Department or Ministry of Environment in South Africa, which is the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. Under the section called Chemicals and Waste Management, responsible for waste management, and where the whole discussion in terms of plastics and also the waste speakers in particular resides under. So you will understand why I'm here. So I'm standing in for Dr. Ayub. We're just waiting for him. We think that he probably missed one street or so. So we are hoping that he will be arriving soon. And when he arrives here, he will take over his responsibility. I'm pretty sure that he was practicing these names the whole night. And I had to practice the names in a minute or so. So with me here, I've got the speakers for this afternoon, of which, starting with myself, as I've already mentioned, my name is Tshilidzi Ligaraba, and I also have Mr. Johnson Duroc from Kipon Landfill Waste Speaker Association in Ghana. I also have Adalberto Maluf from Brazil. I also have Ed Shepherd from Unilever. I also have my friend here, Yasuhiko Kamakura from ILO. I also have Soledad Mella from Chile National Waste Speakers Association. And I would like to welcome you all. And I'm pretty sure that by the end of this, we'll be all aligned in terms of the conversations that we are going to take into the bigger venue and also take them back home in terms of the experiences that some of the colleagues are going through. And I think we are blessed this afternoon to get an opportunity to listen from the voices of from all the angles, from business, from labor, from the waste speakers themselves, and not only from one area, but coming from Ghana and also Chile. So I would like to call upon myself. I think I'm the first one. Okay, yes, I'll be taking you through the experiences in terms of the South African picture or landscape of waste speakers and how we get here today and the journey that we've walked. It's not an easy journey, it's not a once-off, but it's a journey that will be taking over a long period of time. But I should say that I'm glad that we have a story today that we can share with others with the hope that we are all going to learn from each other going forward. Thank you. Okay, I have a presentation slides that I've prepared with the hope that Jack will be able to present them. And I'll move here because if I'm standing there, I will not be able to look at them. Okay, all right, we can move on to the next slide. I'll take you through a brief presentation looking at the enabling legislative environment in South Africa, and also looking at the work that we did in terms of the waste speaker integration guidelines, and also Another aspect of the legislation that was added to enhance the waste speaker debate, and also looking at from the EPR, then what are we working on? And from there, we'll just then have a conversation in terms of why we are here in Paris, what are the aspects that we are looking at. Next. Okay, next slide. Okay. In South Africa, we have what we call the National Waste Management Strategy, which is a legislative requirement of the National Environmental Management Waste Act of 2008. This came into effect in 2009. We have already gone through 2 versions of the National Waste Management Strategy, of which the latest one now, the revised one, which is the 2020, it's embedded in 3 pillars, which is waste minimization, looking at the prevention of waste, and also where waste cannot be prevented. We committed to diverting 45% of the waste from landfill within 5 years through reuse, recycling, recovery, and alternative waste treatment. And this is the most important aspect, pillar, of that relates to what we are talking about today. And also the next one will be the efficient and effective waste services. And the third one will be the compliance, enforcement, and awareness. Next slide. Maybe looking at what is embedded in the National Waste Management Strategy and the waste speaker, which talks to the separation of waste at source, where we committed to integrating waste speakers into the waste management system, and we made commitments in terms of what will be coming after the strategy itself. So this was guiding the work that we are doing today and further on. Next slide. Okay. So I've mentioned earlier, given that we were dealing with a territory that we were not aware of, and we didn't know how to handle it, then the department acknowledged the significance of the waste speakers in the value chain of waste management. Given that it is estimated that about 90,000 or between 60 and 90,000 informal waste speakers are working at the heart of South African recycling economy, recovering mostly paper and packaging waste from service chain, and also introducing secondary resources into the country value chain. The department, which is the DFFE, my ministry, and the Ministry of Science and Innovation, then developed the waste speaker integration guideline. And this was already in 2020. These guidelines are meant to guide municipalities and industries on measures to improve the working condition of the waste speakers through the integration into the waste management system and recycling structures. Next. So what does this guideline entail? And I think it attempts to answer most of the questions that you probably have in your respective countries, which is why waste speaker integration is important. Who exactly are these waste speakers? How do they work? And also the importance of recognizing their contribution. What exactly is this waste speaker integration? How to develop, institutionalize, and also implement the waste speaker integration plans. Next slide. So, the guideline also looks at the principles in terms of what are the underlying principles that guides engagement or working with waste speakers. And among some, these are the main ones, meaning that we needed to recognize, so waste speakers were calling upon recognition, respect, and also redress. The waste speakers know best what they want. Don't go and impose yourselves in terms of their work. They know, they will tell us. So we will need to work together with the waste speakers. Meaningful engagement. We are here now having conversations around waste pickers, with waste pickers. Build on what exists. You cannot be starting new things without the inclusion of the waste pickers. You need to understand how waste pickers have been doing it. What are the areas that needs to be improved if there are any? If not, leave it as it is and continue working with waste pickers. Cost effective and increased diversion. Evidence-based, enabling environment, improved conditions and income, compensation for services and savings, and holistic integration. So I think these are the principles that are embedded within the guideline itself. And in your work with waste pickers, these are the principles that you need to look at in terms of guiding your work. Okay. Right. So I will share later in terms of where you can access the guideline. I will not be able to take you through what the guideline entails given the time that we have, the limited time that we have. So you're going to go through the guidelines yourselves and understand what is in here. But a step further in terms of what we did in South Africa, the minister has identified and recognized waste pickers. This is very close to her heart. And this was then included in the EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility. The DFFE published the Extended Producer Responsibility with its notices. And the regulations applies to electrical, electronic, lighting, paper, packaging, and certain single-use product sectors. It recognizes the mechanism of waste pickers' role in collecting recyclables because the EPR introduces the PROs, and PROs needs to recycle the material, and now they need to collect the material back. And there were people who were doing this that can now be enhanced in terms of the enabling instrument, which is the EPR, to get more material diverted away from the landfill site. The regulation obligates the PROs to compensate waste collectors, reclaimers or pickers who register with the national database. As you are aware, when you don't know who you're dealing with, it's a bit difficult. So I think this is the one instrument that we needed to use in order for us to be able to know, for PROs to be able to know who they are dealing with so that there could be traceability. They needed to have a register in terms of who are the waste pickers and who's being paid and how much. The collection fee and also the registration database will have to be reviewed on a regular basis. So the EPR introduces a fee which was not determined in the regulation itself. The regulation enabled the PROs to go and work together with waste pickers in terms of the fee that is allowable per kg, per ton, and so forth. And this is the work that we are still busy with in South Africa. There is a lot happening. As the job continues, we are improving our systems. And this is the work. It's quite a lot of work, but we are learning as and when we are going. Next slide. Next. Okay. So I've mentioned the registration system. The waste picker registration system, which we call it SAPRAS, was developed between 2020 and 2021. And this was piloted in 2022. As you can see, it's still quite early. We identified certain municipalities where we needed to pilot who can be registered at the time. We worked with both AERO, African Reclaimer Organization, and SAUPA, which are the two main waste picker organizations that we are working closely with as government. They give us a lot of information and they assist us in the engagement with waste pickers. They played a very instrumental role in this process. The pilots were funded by the Department of Science and Innovation, Treasury, and also UNIDO, and also the World Bank Pro-Blue program, which was they also assisted at the second half of 2022. The waste picker integration guideline process then called for a need to develop a registration system and register the waste pickers. Then also the second aim was that the waste pickers must be registered and also be paid the service fee, as I've already mentioned. To date, we have registered just above 7,000 waste pickers. As you can see, I've mentioned earlier that we have about 90,000 waste pickers. So it's a journey. We still have a long way to go. So currently we are working with our NGOs as well as the PROs in order to roll out further registration so that everyone can be registered that needs to be in the registration that are working on waste picking. So this is the work that we are busy with. We still have a long way to go, but we are hoping that the next time we have this conversation, we would have gone or covered almost 90%, if not 100%, across South Africa. Next slide. So I didn't want to put too many lessons, but the one lesson that we've learned from this process is that it takes all the stakeholders. You cannot do this on your own. As I've mentioned in the principles, you cannot impose how it should be done. You should do it with the waste pickers. You need all the stakeholders. You need national government. You need municipalities. You need scientists. You need your PROs. You need business. I know that we've got business here that are going to tell us the work that they've been doing with waste pickers. So you need a holistic team in terms of participation for the success of this work. So it's a journey. We are in the process, and this is where we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you, South Africa. Good afternoon. Our protocols observed. Sorry, I joined you late. My name is Ayub Macharia. I come from Kenya. I got so much absorbed into the discussion in the negotiation floor, and I didn't know that time was up. And sorry for that. I have consulted, and we have agreed that we do all the presentations, and then you write your questions nicely, and then we will ask the questions after the presentations. However, we may not be generous with the time with the second presenter, so we will ask Johnson Doe to present a bit quickly, to spend less time. Yes, I know he's a fast speaker. He's very fast. Yes.
Welcome. Thank you. I'm my first speaker, but I have to make the work easy for the interpreters. I will go a bit slow. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Johnson Doe. I'm from Ghana. I work on the Kondam site in Ghana, where there are 700 of us who are part of the Waste Pickers Association at the Kondam floor. And during COVID, we were already displaced from a nearby landfill, and this is as a result of why the engineered landfill site is closed. And so we moved to an irregulated dump site nearby, which received the majority of Accra's waste, as well as a significant amount of imported textile waste coming from countries like France. And these wastes are completely chaffed, which we receive at the landfill in Pune. Now, we are told that the dam site where we currently work in will be closed soon, with no plan for safeguarding our livelihoods. But even before the dam site closes, the valuable waste that is coming to the dam site is quickly dwelling as circular economy policies establish alternative recycle collection system in the city that divert materials away from us and getting to the hands of the private business. So you can see directly we are directly going out of business. On the dam side, yes, we face occupational hazards that are getting worse, including exposure to medical waste. This is one of the serious conditions that we face at the dam site. And also, toxic chemicals and smoke from burning textile waste. As I mentioned earlier, there are huge tons of textile waste received, and the only thing that can be done is to burn this waste direct from the port and from the other second-hand markets. We see less valuable recyclable materials and more hazardous waste. While the private sector lays claim to recycle materials that we have for years been recovering our society, so treat us as disposable. This is a huge message or a strong message or a point for us to think about. Because of the privatization of waste and the lack of inclusion by government, we are not being integrated into all this alternative recycle collection system. So we have been thinking outside the dam sites. We started thinking, what do we do? We cannot depend on the landfill for the rest of our life because there are not consultations. So we started looking for gaps in the waste management chain in the community, where we see the community lacks waste collection services, and we began to pilot. And what it looked like for us to provide a doorstep waste collection. And what we believe or what we realized is that we collected materials and data and drafted a proposal that we took to the municipality for them to be able to support us, to grant us a contract. But they told us they can only support us if we are into cooperatives. So we should go and put ourselves into cooperatives and come back. So we have to spend almost a year learning how to form a cooperative, which we registered last August. And we went back to the government again to ask for infrastructure support and a contract to provide doorstep waste collection. But that support never came, and the low-income community still lacks waste collection services and continues to burn their waste or dump it at the edge of the ocean. We are trying to create our own just transition. This is not justice for anyone. I think you can see the pictures behind. This is what we started by putting ourselves into the community to do a pilot to see how we can fill in these gaps. I have been working as a waste picker for decades at the landfill, and I haven't seen any proper engagement from the government to formalize or improve our work. I was so amazed to hear from the South African the marvelous work that they are doing with the waste pickers, and I think this should continue and spread to more African countries. We are not being involved in so many discussions on waste management in Ghana. Whilst the government claims they are engaging waste pickers, they engage NGOs and researchers to talk for us, which is not the best procedure, the best idea, because the engagement that they did was not the perfect engagement that we think, and they cannot speak for us. We want to speak for ourselves. Even when we are engaged, the support never counts. So we believe that the engagement that they are doing is not the best engagement. If just transition is left as a voluntary measure, it will not happen for the majority of waste pickers around the world. And the economic condition for families like mine will continue to be worsened because our service will be slowly and clearly will be eliminated in the system, which we believe it will not be fair for waste pickers around the world. Just transition and legal recognition for the right of waste pickers to maintain our role in the system should be mandatory, both in national laws and in this plastic treaty especially. This is why just transition must be a core obligation of this treaty. And we hope that you advocate for this, for us, on our behalf, as we get into many discussions, many sessions. We believe, and with the power and authority saying that there should be the waste pickers before other workers in the value chain, because as we speak, there can't be a recycling without waste pickers. So we always say recycling without waste pickers is garbage. We believe that this message will work for all of us. Thank you very much.
Wow, I told you this guy speaks fast. Yeah? The one coming next even speaks faster than him. Yeah? Thank you, Johnson. That was good lessons. Now, I hope you have written your questions. Or can I give you 30 seconds to write your questions? Okay.
It's faster to say that already,
Thank you. Now, I'm inviting Adalberto.
Adalberto.
Yes. Adalberto Marufi from Brazil to make his presentation. I understand you're faster than my brother from Ghana. Yes, please.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm faster, but I'll try. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It's an honor for me to be here. As most of you might know, Brazil emerged from 4 very difficult years with a far-right government which didn't care too much about environment. So imagine how much you would care about all the waste pickers. And this is something really, really important for our president. I don't know how much you are aware of that, but the president of Brazil, he joined the Christmas years event of the waste pickers for more than 20 years. It's part of his heart. The person who delivered the presidential title to him was a waste picker, a very important lady for us, Aline, also part of the national movement. And Marina, when the minister invited me to be Vice Minister of Environment and Climate Change, she only asked me one thing. Said, Adalberto, President Lula asked me, put the waste pickers in the heart of the minister, because this is a huge priority. And after these 4 years, Brazil is back at a very difficult social reality. We are back with 33 million people under the line of poverty, people that don't have what to eat. So especially here when we debate the treaty of plastics, for us it's not only an environmental treaty, it's much more about sustainable development and social economic inclusion. That's why you are all going to listen and see during the debates that Brazil's priority for the negotiations here is the proper insertion of the waste pickers as an economic force that needs to be valued and remunerated throughout all the process. This is a very important thing for us. Brazil needs, of course, as most of developing countries, more integrated waste management solutions. Half of Brazilian cities don't even have a proper landfill. We still have illegal dumps at majority of our cities. We have 1 million workers of the recycling industry and waste pickers, 1 million, and just a very few of them really have their social and labor rights. So when President Lula was elected 20 years ago for the first time, he made a couple of decrees. He had like 2 actions, which we call pro-catador, waste speakers. At that time, our idea was just to formalize the cooperatives, give money to buy machinery and space. So it was good. At that time, more than 2,500 cooperatives were created. So it started to have, a good movement. Waste pickers represent 80, 90% of some of the recyclables in Brazil on plastic, for example. More than 90% come through them. But on the recycling facilities, only 25% of the plastics that arrive there come directly from the recyclings or the waste pickers. So we have a lot of intermediators in the way that stay with most of the resources and the funding. So Brazil approved just now, we also had with President Lula, 2 more decrees on this, recreating the program for waste recycling, the creation with the credits of recycling, which is the first time where we put our reverse logistic, our EPR, that the companies in Brazil, the reverse logistics says that the private sector needs to finance our EPR system. They were not really financing too much. Of course, we have some companies like Unilever, which are leaders and have been doing their job, but a lot of brand owners haven't. So the EPR, somehow, we are finding ways so that these credits of the recycling go and really pay directly the recycling cooperatives and the waste pickers. And we were able to improve dramatically with the creation of a post-consumer trackable system, which is an online system with blockchain, artificial intelligence, very sophisticated. I think one day you're probably going to listen about it. So we can track all the invoices from the recycling cooperatives, all the transportation invoices, all the intermediaries up to the recycling factory and the factory that use plastics. So it's a very sophisticated that help us to find a lot of frauds. Like a lot of the credits were coming from cities that have illegal dumps. So the system created to make it better for the recycling facility, but at the end we are giving the money to that intermediary guy, which is, taking care of some of the informal waste pickers at a very bad social way. So the system helped us to understand a lot of things. We definitely want to move, expanding this third-party auditing throughout the system. Right now, our priority, we just had a public hearing about packets, and we want to have a decree. Brazil is going to have mandatory recycling content on plastic production. Brazil is the 6th largest producer of plastics in the world, so I think we hope it's that. We are also going to have mandatory targets for increasing recycling throughout the different regions, and we really want to come down to talk to the brand owners, the big guys, because the retail system in Brazil, they don't do much on the reverse logistics. Some brand owners do, but there's a lot of free riders of the system that don't do anything. So we want to try to really put them down to talk and say how you are going to effectively make the money here that the legislation asks to go down there. So of course, we are trying to put in this new plan a new circular economy, reuse, eco-design. There's a lot of things that need to be done that Brazil haven't actually been doing too much. But a great priority for us is try to find ways to effectively make the resources come to whoever needs. So that's why today in the morning as ISWA, the International Waste Management Association, we're talking to our colleagues from Emirates, and hopefully everything will move by COP28 so that we can have a global fund of plastics to finance waste pickers around the world. This, I think, will be a really important thing. Brazil will host COP30 in 3 years for climate at the Amazon. You all understand how the Amazon issue became a big thing for greenhouse gas emission. So during President Lula's first day, half of his decrees were on environment, a lot of them on Amazon. I see I have colleagues here from Norway, from Germany, big supporters of our Amazon fund. We are very grateful for that. But I believe also that this treaty here somehow needs to find ways to effectively make this money flow to whoever is necessary. Also requires mandatory recycling contents. Just to finish the case of Brazil, the last 2 years, our former president, he allowed importation of recyclables to Brazil. After China, India, Indonesia, everybody prohibited, European Union, everybody prohibited imports of recyclables. They come to Brazil, they start coming. So we increased 10 times the imports of recyclables to Brazil. So this made the price go down, and our waste pickers couldn't get remunerated anymore. It was horrible. He also reduced the import tax to buy from China the resin to produce plastic. So of course it made it really hard for the recycling companies which were selling plastic resins there. So it was just a horrible situation. My first meeting when I got as vice minister was with the association, and they brought us all this topic. We just approved with the president a creation of a new working group to solve this. And hopefully on the 5th of June, in 2 weeks, at the Environment Day, we'll be announcing a lot of bold measures to try to tackle that. And I hope that somehow our 20 years experience working on this area can help to inspire other countries. But of course, we are also here to learn and see other ways to effectively make this social, economic, productive integration of the waste pickers into the real economy faster and better. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Good presentation, especially about the dynamics and how your waste pickers disappear from the lab because of imports. That's quite interesting. Now, I wish to invite the next speaker. Fortunately, he comes from Unilever, and I would like him to do his presentation. The way they do an advert, an advert takes very little time. Since he's not a waste speaker, he communicates through adverts. He will do the same in this meeting. So welcome, Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you very much. I'll try and do my best. Hi everyone, my name's Ed. I work for Unilever. We're a global consumer goods company. We about 3.4 billion people use our products every day across 190 countries. And I'm also here as part of the Business Coalition for a Global Plastics Treaty. The Business Coalition is a group of over 100 leading businesses from across the value chain. And we're here in Paris calling for legally binding global rules and measures across the full life cycle of plastic, including on plastic production and use. As a business coalition, we support a core obligation on the just transition within the treaty. And we're very pleased to see the explicit language referenced in the treaty mandate related to the informal sector over a year ago now. The Business Coalition has put together a position for INC-2, a set of policy recommendations. I recommend if you visit our website, you can see those. And I was keen to highlight a couple related to this conversation today. Firstly, we are calling for global rules, for mandatory rules around the product design that many plastic packaging is packaged in. We think there should be rules to make sure that all packaging that's placed on the market can be safely recycled. We also support mandatory targets around PCR use within plastic packaging. I think both of those are really going to be important if we work towards the needs of the informal sector. Workers in the informal sector play a significant role in the... A little bit higher. Can people hear me at the back now? I'm happy to start again if you didn't hear the start of this. Thumbs up at the back. Apologies for those nearby, I'll hear this twice. But. So for those at the back, so my name's Ed. I work for Unilever. We're a global consumer goods company, and we're here as part of the Business Coalition for a Global Plastics Treaty. The Business Coalition supports legally binding global rules and measures across the full life cycle of plastic, including on the production and use of plastic. Business Coalition supports a core obligation on the just transition within the treaty context. and we were very pleased to see the explicit language related to the informal sector within the treaty mandate. We've put together a set of policy recommendations for INC-2. You can see these on our website, and just to cover a couple of these. So we support mandatory design requirements for packaging to make sure that everything that's being placed on the market can be safely recycled, as well as supporting mandatory targets around PCR use within packaging. We think these are going to be really important to ensure that a level playing field for all businesses seeking to work with these materials. In terms of the informal sector, clearly workers in the informal sector play a significant role within the recycling economy. This has been largely unrecognised historically, and therefore designing effective policies to increase the collection and recycling of plastic, as well as in the future models we need to move to around reuse and refill, there is a key role for workers within informal and cooperative settings. So what does this mean within the treaty specifically? Well, we believe as a business coalition, the informal sector should be explicitly recognised in the treaty negotiation process and the associated decision-making processes that flow out of the treaty at a regional, national and local level. And the treaty must provide mechanisms for national governments to support a just transition for all people involved in the plastics value chain, including the informal sector. This should promote opportunities for greater integration of the informal sector within formal value chains and support investment to build capacity, resilience and self-organisation, informed by the views of the informal sector themselves. This should empower the informal sector to operate within existing and emerging regulatory systems, such as extended producer responsibility. I think the example from my friend in South Africa is a really good example of that. So business is very much behind this approach. You know, as Unilever, we have partnered with some other companies and with some experts in this sector to create the Fair Circularity Initiative. This Fair Circularity Initiative has created a set of principles for corporate engagement within the informal sector. And we've done this because we want to use far more recycled content in the future. As Unilever, we've set a goal to halve our use of virgin plastic. And up to now, we've increased our use of recycled content by over 20%. But we want to use far more recycled content in the future. Consumers are asking for this. And so we need to ensure that we build more resilient value chains, and we work directly with those communities that are collecting the most plastic. An example of this, of the principles coming to life, is our work in South Africa with the African Reclaimers Organisation, where we've worked alongside Coca-Cola and some other partners to create innovative funding systems for the collection of waste. For us, this helps us gain more recycled content, and for those working in the informal sector, it supports better livelihoods. And this project has now been scaled into the EPR system, and I think it's a really good example of the fact that companies want to work and partner directly with the informal sector to try and create better outcomes both for our businesses and for their communities. So why does business want this set of asks within the treaty? Well, with a more reliable policy framework in place, businesses can better support the collaboration of informal sector workers with more formal value chains. This can help address and mitigate human rights impacts, support better livelihoods, and improve the effectiveness of collection and recycling systems, which is something that's good for business. Thank you.
Thank you, Unilever. Since you have seen that the years of saved on time, that's quite good. Now we hear from ILO. I hope you are still writing your questions. I hear some of you are sending by electronically to him. I hope they know you are where to send.
Yes, on the screen.
So we are still collecting your questions. We are putting them together. So, Yasuhiko? I have the floor. Yeah.
Because I'm short, so better start. Yes.
My name is Yasuhiko Kamakura. I work for International Labour Organization. So it's part of the United Nations system. It's we are mandate is pursue the social justice for all workers. So what is social justice? One of you have a different interpretation. Some people say the remedy, some people say wage, some people right to organize, some people say maybe right to speak, collective bargaining. There are so many of them, but we have a vision. It's called the decent work agenda. So decent work agenda consists of the 4 core elements. Number 1 is a decent and good job. Be aware that the OECD as an agency just called a good job and good employment. We got more than that. That means the decent means the faster. Sorry, Anglo-Saxon, American English means different, but it's we call British English, so I will explain more. And this is a good job. It's the decent job is the first element, and second is social security, good OSH, and number 3 social dialogue, and then international labor standard. Sorry. So the question was asked by this: what we have to include, as a living treaty, not just a paper sitting in the UN system, sitting on the desk. There are 3 questions asked in this INC-2: the core obligation. Second is implementation measures, and third is a means of implementation. Our answer is a just transition, but it's not just a transition. It has to have a meaningful just transition. Let me explain that. In our just transition concept, based on the decent work, we just don't want to have government. Government just implicating what they call the paper just transition into the action. We want to have these 4 elements of decent work in place in the just transition. So, number 1, we want to ask the government, consult the industry, business, and the workers, all of you, consult with the process and the continued consultation to develop the policy, implementation, monitoring, evaluate, improving the policy. It's a management system approach, as you know. And what is our value? Our value is not just a piece of paper. We have an instrument called International Labor Standard. You maybe heard that the trade union exists. Employer association exists. Because we have an international labor standard, ILO has created. And the core idea of the decent work is we believe, actually, it's true that all workers, all of you here, even everybody here, we are all workers. We all have a basic right, basic workers' right, as part of the UN called the human right. These are right to assembly, organize association like a West Picker Association, corporate, represent the industry association. Also, I like to speak and of course collectively organize a dialogue and create a collective bargaining agreement. So this is one thing. And we believe that equality for everybody, regardless race, nationality, faith, gender, where you live, what your background are. So everybody have to have equality. And there's no child labor in a section. And as a member, actually Kenya, South Africa is a core member of the International Labour Organization. As a member of these ILO, all members required fully respect these workers' fundamental rights. And you see that you may hear that in the UNEP discussion, this is the treaty, it's going to be valid, become effective when your member state, when your government, ratify. But that's not the case on the IAWP's fundamental right. Regardless of whether government ratify or not, all workers have this basic right. So this is a key message and have to be including the forthcoming international treaty. So let me just a little bit talk about the core obligation. You have that the core obligation. We have to have a decent work for everybody based on international labor standard. I'm not going to go detail about international labor standard. There's so many of them. So we have a categorically catalog. So if you look at the ILO website, you will find out the answer. Or the three major UN, most of the UN major languages. So that's a core obligation. We have to just transition under decent work and the inclusive social dialogue. So what is the implementation measures? Implementation measure doesn't come alone. You have to come together with the obligation. Because also same as going to means implementation. This all three of them come into one package. So we have three of the elements how work collaboratively and seamlessly, and have a real three of the elements have to have a real meaningful conversations and connection. So just transition is and decent work is a core foundation. This we have a good treaty to protect all of you, not just West speaker, any occupation. Also, interpretation of this today. So everybody has a right. So all we consider workers, and we come here to protect everybody's right. Thank you.
Thank you, ILO, for assuring us that the West speakers should be decent workers. And now, last but not least, we hear from Soledad Mella from Chile. You have the floor.
And Soledad has requested to read her speech in Spanish, and then I will read the translation in English.
Muchas gracias por estar acá presente. Desde que comenzamos a participar de este tremendo desafío, que es el Tratado de Plástico, decidimos no frenar nuestras demandas que por mucho tiempo les pedimos a nuestros países, pero jamás fueron escuchadas. El Tratado de Plástico ha sido una ventana y una plataforma que nos ha posesionado a un alto nivel, que pone a los recicladores en un nivel jamás esperado para nosotros. Jamás pensamos que estaríamos en estos espacios hablando con tantas delegaciones diplomáticas de todo el mundo y que nuestra presencia causaría tanto interés y apoyo. Jamás pensamos que seríamos bienvenidos en estos espacios, ya que nosotros como recicladores rara vez nos sentimos bienvenidos por nadie. A pesar de nuestra enorme contribución tanto en el medio ambiente como en la seguridad humana. La verdad que no dejamos de estar sorprendidos, agradecidos y orgullosos de todo esto. Pero a pesar de todo eso, no es suficiente para nuestros más de 20 millones de compañeros recicladores. Si este tratado vinculante, las delegaciones, si que en este tratado vinculante las delegaciones de nuestras naciones no colocan nuestra demanda con fuerza para garantizar nuestra permanencia en este oficio que nos ha dado de comer y por sobre todo vivir una buena vida. Queremos pedir a sus delegaciones que la transición justa sea una obligación, protegiendo a todos los sectores de la cadena de plástico, que incluye, en primer lugar, a los recicladores como los más vulnerados en todos nuestros derechos sociales, laborales y humanos. También a los trabajadores que están en las plantas de producción de plástico y en la extracción, y como nosotros, vulnerando su salud. Estamos conscientes que este tratado no será fácil, pero también estamos conscientes de nuestro aporte a este proceso que deberá hacer las naciones, todas las naciones, ponerse de acuerdo para que esto tenga el impacto mundial a nivel ambiental y sobre todo humano. Mientras eso ocurre, nosotros los recicladores seguiremos en los vertederos, en los campos, en los mares, en los bosques y en los ríos y en las calles, recolectando los residuos plásticos que todos generan. Y cuando el acuerdo se cumpla, nosotros seguiremos reciclando los residuos plásticos. Solo pedimos que nos apoyen económicamente a través de infraestructura, maquinarias, tecnología y transporte, además de apoyo formativo, capacitación y fortalecimientos a nuestras organizaciones formales e informales y a las cooperativas de recicladores de base, para garantizar así una transición justa de la que tanto hablamos. También entendemos la necesidad de avanzar hacia un sistema de reutilización y reparación que antañamente proporcionaban empleo a millones de personas en todo el mundo, que fueron desplazados de esas funciones por la economía de usar, tirar y tirar sin una transición justa. Pedimos también que nos apoyen en la transición hacia un trabajo de reutilización y la reparación, algo que muchas de nuestras organizaciones ya están haciendo, pero prácticamente sin ningún apoyo. Por último, pedimos que nos contraten para prestar servicios esenciales de recogida de basura en nuestras comunidades sin servicios, donde aún no se nos reconoce y donde aún no hay justicia ambiental de saneamiento básico. Queremos enfrentar este desafío, pero lo queremos hacer de forma digna y con los instrumentos necesarios. Y para eso necesitamos de vuestra ayuda y de vuestro apoyo, dejando claro que somos de esta cadena uno de los eslabones más importantes, si no el primero, que nos hemos generado e inventado este trabajo desde hace 4 generaciones atrás. Gracias por estar con nosotros. Gracias por hacer visibles a los invisibles. Gracias por darle rostro a los sin rostros. Pero sobre todo, gracias por darle voz a los sin voz. La transición justa sin recicladores es basura.
Since we began to participate in this tremendous plastics treaty challenge, we decided not to shy away from our demands, which for so long we've been making in our own countries, but which are never really heard there. The plastics treaty has become an opening for us and a platform that has positioned us at a high level, placing waste pickers at a level we never anticipated. We never thought that we could be in this space talking with so many diplomatic delegations from around the world, and that our presence would cause so much interest and support. We never thought that we would even be welcome in these spaces, since we as waste pickers rarely feel welcomed by anyone, despite our enormous contribution to both the environment and human security. In all honesty, we are surprised and grateful and proud of this, but in spite of all this, it's not enough for our more than 20 million fellow waste pickers if in this binding treaty, our nation's delegations do not forcefully ensure that our demand to guarantee that we be allowed to sustain our work in this industry, which for so long has given us life and enabled us to feed our families. We want to request that your delegation, that a just transition be a core obligation in this treaty, and that the treaty require the protection of all workers in plastic value chains, which includes, first and foremost, waste pickers as the most vulnerable and exploited workers in terms of social, labor, and human rights, but also those workers in plastics production and extraction, and like us, suffer the health consequences of their occupation. We're aware that this treaty will not be easy, but we're also very conscious of our contribution to this process, which nations must agree on so that this treaty has a global, environmental, and especially humanitarian impact. In the meantime, we remain working in the world's dump sites, streets, fields, waterways, and forests, collecting the plastic waste that everyone generates. And when the treaty is completed, we expect to continue recycling plastic waste. We only ask for economic support for infrastructure, machinery, technology, and transportation, as well as educational support, training, and the strengthening of our formal and informal organizations, and especially our cooperatives, to ensure that this just transition that we are speaking about today can be real. We also understand the need to move towards reuse and repair systems, which once generated livelihoods for millions of people around the world who were displaced from those roles by the linear, disposables-based economy, and without a just transition. We ask that we also be supported in the transition to reuse jobs and repair, something that many of our organizations are already doing, but with virtually no support. Finally, we ask that we be contracted to provide essential waste collection services in our underserved communities, where we're still not being granted environmental justice and basic sanitation. We want to face this challenge of plastic pollution, but we want to do it in a dignified way with the necessary tools. And for that, we need your support in making it clear that we are one of the most important and first links in the waste value chain, and that we have generated and invented this work for the past 4 generations. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for helping make the invisible visible. Thank you for giving a face to the faceless. And above all, thank you for giving a voice to the voiceless. Just transition without waste pickers is garbage. Thank you.
Those were very good presentations. Let's appreciate the panelists. They carried all that knowledge from their countries to bring it to us. That was good, eh? Now, I have several questions that have come. And I wish to lead all of them. And then the panelists will listen to the one that is relevant to you. You will respond. I know Unilever wants to lead, so you'll be the first to answer. And then, yeah, I'll give you you'll be number 1 to answer. Because I can see a question for Unilever. But let me read all of them. Question number 1, from International Trade Union Confederation. The IUTC supports the demands of waste pickers and asks how the treaty can achieve just transition for all workers. What policies can be used? Then into bracket. I have been in South Africa and Brazil. Then
excuse me, but that's my question, but that's not what I wrote.
Oh.
Can I ask my own question?
Yes, you can.
My name is Bert de Wel. I represent the ITUC, the International Trade Union Confederation. It's a bit strange to have your questions reformulated.
What did release you?
I also have a specific question for the representative from Unilever. So, yes, my name is Bert de Wel. I represent the International Trade Union Confederation, so the organization that represents all the free trade unions. We have affiliates in 168 countries. We represent 200 million workers. And we explicitly would like to support the demands from the waste pickers to be recognized in this treaty. Yeah. We think they need the respect and the recognition in the work that is being done here. We think indeed, and we support also just transition as the concept to pick up this fight. Trade unions have invented the concept of just transition. It's ours. We started with it in the 80s, 90s, and we are now successfully integrating it in the environmental treaties. Why do we need that? Why do we need just transition? Because we think that social justice is the guarantee for good environmental policies.
Please ask the question. Ask the question.
Yeah. So that's why I would like to ask all of you, refer to our support for the waste pickers, but don't forget all the workers. Sol said it very clearly, we need a just transition for all workers, whether they are formal, informal, public services, municipal services, we need them all on board. Because we are very concerned about this major focus on informal workers.
Thank you, thank you.
If you see Unilever, that's none of their workers. They're all formal workers. They speak about nobody that's on their payroll. It's easy to engage in informal workers and forget the formal workers that also need to be engaged, as Yasuhiko from ILO also explained. Thank you. We are very concerned about this, and that's why I wanted to share this with you.
Now, the other question is, do the panelists agree that the treaty must include a definition of just transition? Number 3, how will businesses such as Unilever address non-recyclable plastics such as sachets. Can they lead the way in changing to reuse and refill? Number 4 is a business coalition calling for a ban on non-recyclables such as sachets. Number 5, how can recycling be promoted if virgin plastic is cheaper than recycled plastic? What are the solutions to this? Number 6, what proportion of waste pickers are not citizens, e.g. in South Africa? Can they still access EPR? Number 7, what measures has Brazil taken to reduce the input of recyclables to safeguard waste pickers' activity? Those are the questions. Let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. Apologies, I need to run to another engagement, as it appears a few others have to as well. In terms of the Business Coalition's position, so there's a number of mandatory design requirements that we support. It's going to be really important that we phase out particularly problematic uses of plastic, including in packaging, including those that are going to have more likelihood to leak into the environment. And you mentioned sachets, and that's a good example where there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that topic. In terms of the Business Coalition's point of view, supporting a phase-out for these particularly problematic types of plastic packaging is something that you can read on our recommendations on our website. I think you mentioned definitions. We think the treaty is an enormous opportunity across a whole range of areas to define much more clearly for all stakeholders what we're talking about, and that includes on things like what is actually recyclable. As industry, we've aligned already on a definition of what can be safely recycled through the Ellen MacArthur Foundation UNEP Global Commitment. We've got about 20% of global plastic packaging volumes are covered by that. And this is just the kind of opportunity we have with the treaty to take voluntary action, which alone isn't going to work, and scale that into mandatory policy that's the same everywhere, so all businesses play by the same rules. I can't quite remember all the rest of the questions, I'm afraid. But I've got to run. I'll leave some business cards at the front. Do get in touch if you'd like to have a conversation with us whilst we're here. There's a whole delegation from the Business Coalition.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Unilever.
Well, let me just jump quickly on the question on Brazil. I also have to come back to the plenary doc at the venue. In the case of the increase of imports from recyclables, which have harmed a lot the waste pickers, our proposal from the Minister of Environment and Climate Change is just to prohibit importation. That's what we plan. We made this proposal to the President. So we are going to now hear society to see if they agree, if it's tangible and feasible, or we increase the taxes, or we increase the quality, the standards of the import, which make more difficult. But in our opinion, we have to prohibit importation of recyclables to Brazil because we have a lot of waste that needs to be transformed in recyclables. All right.
Thank you, Brazil. South Africa.
Thank you. Doctor, you come back to the question on the definition, but if I may just add there, and I think it's the one slide that I did not go into, on the issue of the just transition, where the government of Kenya and the government of South Africa are supporting, and they are strongly behind the initiative called the Just Transition. Of course, we are indeed wary of the use of the word Just Transition for other purposes. There is a need for conversation in terms of what we table this Just Transition for its purpose, for its intended purpose. So I think in the conversations that we'll be having in the text, it will be clearer in terms of the reference of the Just Transition in this aspect where we have tabled it before. In terms of the illegal waste pickers, the registration system that we have now is that we register all the waste pickers who are picking all the materials, waste materials, And during registration, we do use an identification than saying that it's whether illegal or not illegal. That is not the intended purpose of the registration, but the purpose of the registration is to identify the person who's the waste picker.
Hi. Let me answer the few of the questions. Number one, definition. We have a definition of just transition of the ILO. Well, it's better to have just the definition include the treaty, but we won't have our definition. It means that simply bringing transformation to the circular economy with your participation. So without the workers' participation, including you, we don't see any value. It just makes it confused. We are afraid that there end up exclusion of the worker participation. That's not for ILO concept. The second one question is about the banning the unsafe, dangerous plastic. Yes, we have a Safety Health Convention, the ILO. We don't talk about product. We talk about you. We talk about people safety. We don't. Material is of course we talk about environment, but the first is you people, workers coming first. So if that's danger for the workers' health, our convention says stop it. And alternative, there's a hierarchy procedure the UNEP provided, but that is equal to the banning the dangerous plastic. Also, about the virgin plastic, I think the argument is very similar. The workplace argument, when you have a machine produce more cheaper than human, the company can introduce. Of course, it depends, but have to have a dialogue with workers because it doesn't make no sense to introduce a new machine, maybe cheaper, and kill the million job. Even for government, to reduce tax revenue, it's not that good. For government, also the UN as well. So, but that's a reality. So, it's under how we suggested all the constituent government. Just please talk to the industry people and make the three parties unanimous informed decision, because it's not just all about money. It's all about our human rights, all about your right. So that's all my answer.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, like seriously commenting on the definition, I think we are specific in saying that the just transition definition should include everybody, leaving no one behind, especially the waste pickers, recognizing their human dignity and the importance of the role they play in plastic management. This is the reason why we are saying you cannot talk of plastic pollution or plastic minimization to thinking of instruments that you use or mechanism to bind plastic or reduce plastic, and you cannot talk of waste pickers. So we are always saying that waste pickers first before the other waste. Because looking at the chain, we are the forefront of recycling. And with all, this definition simply means waste pickers should be first before other waste.
Thank you.
Basándome en lo que comentó el Dart, no conozco ni un país en el mundo que haya tenido facilidades para incorporar a los trabajadores informales, que son los recicladores en la calle, a un sistema de transición justa. No conozco. No conozco porque primero no existe ni un catastro de nosotros a nivel global. No existe un número que diga dónde estamos nosotros, cuántos somos y qué hacemos. No se reconoce nuestro trabajo, no se nos reconoce como trabajadores.
So responding to Bert on his question about the waste pickers and other workers, I don't know any countries in this world that have successfully achieved a just transition, governments that have successfully achieved a just transition for informal workers. There aren't good numbers about the number of workers that are out there, informal workers that are out there, and there isn't justice for us.
No tenemos contrato, no tenemos seguros sociales, no somos reconocidos dentro de ningún sistema. Simplemente somos parte de la basura porque a eso nos hemos dedicado. Discriminación en todos los sentidos. Para construir una transición justa, primero hay que reconocer dónde está la vulneración de derechos humanos reales y concretas. Y es en la calle, donde están los invisibles, los sin rostro, los que nadie quiere ver.
We work without contracts, we work without social security, we are essentially part of the waste that we handle. There's discrimination everywhere, and we need to be recognized in terms of human rights.
Decir que solamente nosotros queremos tener un espacio de reconocimiento y dignificación a un oficio que ha hecho algo tan importante como es tratar de parar la contaminación en el mundo. No por temas medioambientales, porque no lo somos de principio. Hoy lo somos, pero fue por economía, fue por pobreza, fue porque realmente los sistemas capitalistas que tenemos en nuestros países golpean siempre a los más pobres.
Saying that we only want space, we want space for recognition, for trying to reduce pollution. We came to this work out of poverty and out of desperation and out of these capitalistic systems that create excess.
Queremos que el mundo de los trabajadores se una también a nuestra lucha. No solamente los trabajadores, sino que también los ambientalistas, los activistas, la sociedad civil. Esta es una tarea de todos, no quien tiene más o menos beneficio, no quien es más reconocido o menos reconocido. Simplemente, hoy día tenemos un llamado a hacernos cargo de una contaminación ambiental, no solamente por derechos humanos, sino también por el derecho a la humanidad y al planeta. Pero para eso se hace necesario cambiar la forma en que estamos construyendo. Hemos visto en el plenario ayer cómo se perdió todo un día por batallas políticas. Nosotros no estamos por batallas políticas, estamos por reconocimiento. Eso es transición justa.
Really wish you could all understand Spanish. We want all workers to be part of this movement, including environmentalists as well. No, we don't want anybody to be more or less recognized. Our charge here is about environmentalism. We're not here for political battles. We're here for a just transition.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good responses. Now, time for oral questions now. Anybody who has a question that was not answered? No oral questions? I'm counting one. Counting two. No, there is a question there. Can you shout? Can you shout from there?
We are seeing that new systems are coming into place also in Latin America, and those systems don't take into account the speakers. But these systems will come. And we are from an NGO, we cooperate with Latin for the last 4 years, for many more years, but specifically with Latin. And we don't know how to do it, so we can, because these systems will come, and we really don't know how to do it, so they can take into account waste speakers, and waste speakers, they are, even before they even think about how to introduce a system, that the first thing where they have to think about waste speakers, because they are doing the job, you know? And tomorrow we will be in a side event, and we will present what we know. We will present, we will tell everyone that there is a lot we know, and we hope that we get a lot of support from value knowledge, ideas from all you, so we can end up having a good idea of what to do when new systems come into place.
Thank you. Thank you. Where is the side event? Invite us.
There is a side event.
Invite us for the side event.
Side event number 8, circular economy. Yeah, new systems. Okay, who cares about the stickers? No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. This was a comment and you are invited for the side event. Okay, there is another comment there. Yes, shout.
Okay, this is a comment and a question in addition. I would like to say good work to Johnson from Ghana, who are leading the Waste Speakers mobilization. Green Africa Organization have been also supporting immensely the work they are doing with the Accra Metropolitan Assembly. And now my question now is to South Africa and Kenya. I would like to ask if you are supporting the just transition as a core obligation.
Yes. Thank you. South Africa.
As I've mentioned earlier, that Kenya is our partner in this, but I can see today he has given me all the responsibility. Yes, Africa has supported the waste speakers in their submission, and the waste speakers, it's in the core obligation, and we've been putting our voice out there in terms of the just transition as for waste speakers as the core obligation. And the reason why we spoke about the guideline today is for parties to consider using the guidelines as a guideline tool as part of the national action plans. So we've been advocating for parties to learn from the work that we're doing and roll it out in other countries as well.
Okay, thank you, South Africa. I think to add on what we are planning, yeah? We are planning that just transition be a key principle. We want to put it up there. And then we make sure that we also interpret it further. We explain it further down in the details. And at least you have seen that it is now under obligations. But we know it will also come down to national action plans. So that is the plan we have. But we are waiting for that time when the text will start forming, and then we will put it at the right place. But at least we are happy that ILO is here with us, and we don't feel alone as parties. We even have other international partners. So we are happy with the teamwork that is forming around this and other parties. Yes, another question. Number 2.
My question is, what effort is being made to look at alternative EPR models besides the Producer Responsibility Organization, the PRO? Because the work we're doing in Hawaii, we see the PRO as a form of waste colonialism. We see the Producer Responsibility Organization, which is handled by the producers of fast-moving consumer goods. They control the flow of resources and materials, and then they go out and they subjugate this vast, they're called waste pickers, but I think it would be helpful in terms of the transition to start thinking of them as a resource, of course, and to get away from this idea of waste. But we're very concerned in Hawaii about producer responsibility organizations. All of this thing can get set up, all of this recycling infrastructure, and then if the corporations that run the PRO decide, oh, this is too much for us, we're just going to round everything up and incinerate it now. Or if the workers decide they're not getting a fair deal with the PRO and they ask for more money or they ask for better compensation, then the Producer Responsibility Organization is in a position to just shut it all down. So I'm really wondering what effort is being made on your part to make sure that this EPR model is just not another form of colonialism.
Okay, thank you. South Africa will answer that one. That's a good question. South Africa will respond from their experiences. Let's hear the second question because I hear we must leave the room now.
Yes.
Organizations
across Asia Pacific, and I was wondering what you could share about your efforts in South Africa and Kenya to bring in more Asian countries into the Just Transition Initiative.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll answer the first question. This second one, the chair will tackle that one. In terms of the PROs, as I've mentioned, that we are at our early stages in terms of implementation of the EPR. We have seen the good deeds coming out of the initial stages. We have an option to review the regulations on a regular basis. I think it's on a 5-yearly basis to see the successes and also the failures so that we can improve. And also for us, the way we have designed the EPR, we cannot be taking the material for incineration. It doesn't have that option as a diversion. So we don't anticipate that. And we do acknowledge your concern. Like I said, we are keeping this on the lookout. We also have included what we call the BEE Charter, looking at how to spread the businesses, not only looking at the bigger recycling facilities, but also accommodating other SMMEs, small medium enterprises, as part of the value chain. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, South Africa. I think EPR, like she has said, I think it is important to look at the flow of resources across the value chain. Like what we are doing in Kenya, we are demanding that the PROs disclose how money is flowing across the value chain. So that way, and it's not done at national government. It is even done at the local level, the local government level, because that is where the waste speakers are. So there is a framework to disclose how the material, how the finances flow across the value chain. So that disclosure will be done every year, and there will be progress reports to make sure that nobody is disadvantaged. Now, about the just transition, we are mobilizing other member states to join us. We know that there are many countries with the waste speakers. As you have heard during the explanation, it looks like when we talk about the indigenous knowledge, these are the guys with the indigenous knowledge about plastic collection. Yes. So when we talk about the indigenous people in waste management, they are the waste people. And so we would like as many countries as possible to join us so that we get good ideas. At the end of the day, what do we want? We want, when the transition comes, when we remove some plastics, at least their businesses are able to live. They're able to survive the shock, because there will be shocks. Okay? Those shocks, we don't want them to be affected by the shock. Instead, we would like them to start enjoying decent jobs like we were taught by IAWP. That is what we are championing for. And of course, the issue of health, they are the ones who are affected more, health issues. So those are some of the issues we'd like to discuss. And all countries that have waste speakers, they are welcome. Please join us. Only that the agenda had to be championed by member states, and that is why South Africa and Kenya decided to take the bull by their horns and lead the others. Thank you very much.